One of the problems that I see a lot with writers is that their stories aren't coming together with the plot and the character. So they might have an episodic story, which is just where random things are happening one after another, but the character isn't impacting the events at all. They're just responding, and we're not really tracking their change. And then another problem is that, you might be deeply invested in the character and have no plot. And so the Snowball of Misbelief is a tool that I developed to help you connect this plot and character element. So before we get into that, I want to first show you about just really simple overview of a character arc. So at the beginning of your story, your protagonist, as a character, they believe something that is it's a lie, and it's the opposite of, in my work with clients, we develop your point. And so that's kind of your worldview. It's what your story is really about. It's what you want to communicate to your reader. And so in the beginning, your character believes something that's the opposite of the point. It's their misbelief. It's the false belief they hold that's going to change throughout the story. So then, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Then the story happens, and the events of the story challenge the protagonist's belief so much that it becomes too painful for them to keep that belief. So they change. And then at the end, the protagonist believes something new. They've changed, their belief has changed. That's really what a character arc is. And at the end, they believe something that is similar to your point, similar to this message you want to convey to your readers. So the Snowball of Misbelief takes this sort of nebulous idea of a character arc and makes it really practical. So this is the Snowball of Misbelief. You can see that we have 4 elements. We've got a conflict, a misbelief, a choice, and a consequence. And this is going to happen over and over and over again in your story. So in every scene, your protagonist is going to experience a conflict. At its core, that's what a scene is. It's a conflict. It doesn't have to be a big conflict like a battle. It might be, but it can also be just a really small conflict, like, am I going to get out of bed today? Am I going to go to that meeting? Am I going to brush my teeth? So the protagonist experiences a conflict in a scene. Then they reference their misbelief to make sense of that conflict. So throughout our lives as people, we are constantly referencing things that have happened in our past, our backstory, and our subconscious beliefs to make sense of the world. So if we think the world is unsafe, we're constantly referencing that as we move through the world. So your protagonist experiences a conflict, and then they reference their beliefs, what they believe in that moment, to make sense of that conflict. Based on what they believe at that moment, they make a choice. So if your character believes the world is unsafe, they may decide not to go to that meeting. And then that choice creates a consequence. So every choice that we make has a consequence. It might be a positive consequence, it might be negative, it might kind of be nothing. Like it might not have a value associated with it, but there is a consequence to every choice we make. And so that consequence then leads to another conflict. And this repeats over and over and over again in your story. And so this snowball is getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it slams into your protagonist at the climax of their story. And that's when they really have to face this misbelief that's been driving the story forward. So one thing I want you to notice about the Snowball of Misbelief is that this misbelief and choice, these are grounded in your protagonist. These are internal elements. This is the character arc piece of the snowball. The consequence and conflict are plot elements. They're external. So when you get these two together, when these merge, when the character arc and the plot merges, you get this really powerful connection in your story. This is what a character arc is made of. It's when plot and your protagonist's internality, their internal reality come together. So when you get this combination of plot and character, you get story magic. You get narrative drive. That's this kind of sense of forward momentum in your story. You get an unputdownable novel. And most importantly, you get emotional impact. So in the Rooted Writers Mentorship, we use the Snowball of Misbelief as the basis for our outlining. And so we track both the plot elements and the character elements. And it's really powerful when you see it come together on the page.